Rusty Daly, Crescent Consulting.
Thank you very much for joining us here today, and thank you for having me out as we sit in front of the Crescent Consulting hole. Do you know which hole this is here?
We're between hole number 1, number 10 here at Quail Creek Golf and Country Club. Well-established country club from the early 1940s, had many PGA tournaments in the past. So it's legendary, got a nice clubhouse, got a nice pool. Course is redone a couple years ago, put in new sand traps, new greens. It's a very nice layout if you're in this part of the town, which is central Oklahoma City. Check it out. Find a way to get on the course. You won't be disappointed.
Great real estate too, right by the clubhouse, so we can certainly see quite a bit of activity going on here today. But let's talk about Crescent Consulting, what it is that you guys do in the oil and gas industry. So what is it you guys do?
So consulting these days has transformed into basically on-demand engineering, on-demand support, as-needed engineering, as-needed field management. You can take that as a one-day process, or you can take that for a yearly process, grabbing people as you need, when you need them, not retaining those people on a yearly salary, not increasing your G&A. Our whole focus is decreasing in operations out-of-pocket expense, their G&A expense, lowering that expense, but also providing that operator with the basin expert that they need. So you may go hire an engineer that is familiar with DJ Basin. He may be familiar with the Northeast, say West Virginia, Ohio, PA. But what if you're an operator in West Texas? We can find that specific person with the experience you need for West Texas. And if you have also a basin in North Dakota, we have North Dakota guys that are experts in North Dakota. So we can place the experts you need in that spot on demand and pay for them as needed. It's a structure we've been in place for 17 years now, providing this service. We have 1,200 resumes on hand of these experts that you can review on given disciplines, from lease operators to construction, to building location, to leasing, to drilling, to completion, to facility engineering design, to lease operators if you want to continue the life of the well. We also put in metrics to trend the oil and gas levels on a daily basis for operators on a continued basis. So that's usually on a retainer fee, and that can be structured to whichever basin you're associated with. So that's it, and kind of that is an overall high-level look. Is you can find a pod of experts for any given basin, for any given part of the well's life span.
Sounds like you're involved in a lot of different areas, and I used to joke that when I first started understanding the oil and gas industry, because I came from ag, that side of things anyways, in terms of that part of the country. We didn't have oil on my side of North Dakota, so I'm only 12 years in, if you will. But I saw really quickly that not only was it an unbelievable opportunity for an entrepreneur, because there's so many different ways to assist the industry and help the industry. I would make the joke that, the perfect oil company is a company that has mineral leases in the file cabinet down in the basement laundry room, because all they want is the check. Now, it's not going to be a very big piece of the pie, but the more, each piece that you bring in, every single one of those things that you just named 30 seconds ago, is going to increase the pie share, if you will. So it sounds to me like you're bringing in a lot of different service companies so that the oil company necessarily doesn't have to deal with 20 or 30 different guys, so to speak.
We're bringing in the management piece, the eyes and ears on location, and the expertise to build the prognosis to drill and complete those wells. So there's a prognosis process that goes in place to, your casing diagrams, your pressures that you're going to need. We will get with their given reservoir. Normally they have a given reservoir or given geologist to pinpoint the depth on the formation and the direction and the length of that well bore, to pinpoint where they want that rock to be exposed, which rock do they want to extract, which rock they want to target. So they will give us those given coordinates, and we will plan the well to those given pinpoint targets that they want. And we will help them develop their completion process to meet that criteria. So they can provide the specifics, the depths, the rocks, the zone, and we will make the well bore where they want at that point. So we will lay that out to them, and then we'll do the procurement process. We will get with the giving service companies in the area, give them 3 or 4 quotes for each service, from cementing to construction to completion, to frac availabilities to solids control, to drilling fluids, the whole process. You're talking probably 300 different vendors that you can get pricing from. We help them with that process. We also help them with the MSA process. That can be a very difficult task to grasp all those service companies, find a direct proper contact to get a master service agreement in place, and we help them with that as well. So we can help them on multiple levels because we're doing this 2 or 3 times a week. We're helping operators achieve this, which is a big help for somebody that's an 8-person operator. They have one person trying to tackle this, and they've never probably done this in their life. In some situations they've done it. It's been many years ago. So them trying to drink water out of a fire hose, trying to find all these different service companies that they're not familiar with, we can lay them a template down. Say, we can help you achieve this. So that's one of our first steps in once they locate the rock they want to exploit. They come to us and say, all right, we need to build all the service companies needed to extract our minerals out of this reservoir. Can you help us do that? And that's day one. So you start, it usually takes about 6 months. It can take up to 6 months to get all your service companies approved. So it's about a 6-month process to get all your service companies approved for that. So that's where we hit the ground running with that piece of service first. And then we start planning the well. They bring it to their board of investors, the prognosis. They approve the cost. And then it's a simple task of, are the permits in place now? Do we have drilling permits? That can be a drag right now. You got BLM. You got BIA properties or leaseholds that can take you up to 18 months to get approved.
Bureau of Indian Affairs, for those listening.
Yes, sir.
Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Indian Affairs. It's federal land. Okay.
So it can take you up to 18 months.
When we were at the height in North Dakota, Senator Hoeven became very active in trying to streamline the BLM process. And when I interviewed David Williams, the CEO of Missouri River Resources, a Native American-owned company and Native American employee company too, all their geologists and physicists are all Native Americans, so top to bottom, secretaries, everything. Mr. Williams said, he goes, Jason, it's a 3-day permitting process if you're on private land here in North Dakota. If you're on the Indian land, Native American land, it's a 49-step process. Like he was just, and I'm like, oh, so it's not 3 days? And what you're saying when it comes to some of those things is a big deal for a lot of people because, well, time is money and days are money, and especially nowadays where people are getting paid to stay home. Well, that can hurt companies more than people think. But I don't want to necessarily get into that. But I did want to ask you about, and I'm glad that the BLM BIA example came up because that's one of those interesting dynamics that people don't think about. And as you were talking and describing what you do and just the management part, the connecting part, the experiential part, the industry's changed in the last 10 years. How's that? How are you dealing with that? Because I imagine you've had to get a whole new set of subcontractors below you, network of people you trust because, well, we've got robotics and AI coming in and we've got LiDAR coming in and coming out. And, in North Dakota, they've got, and I'm sure this is similar where you're at too, but they can hit a pie plate 2 miles below the earth with the right coordinates and these types of things. So the technology that's been integrated in over the last 10 years is tremendous. Talk to me a little bit about how your consulting business has just changed, just over the course of your career.
So consulting 20 years ago, it was kind of a cowboy state of affairs, on location, company man. ruled location. What he dictated was a lot of times the law, right? It's kind of backed away from that a little bit. Company man is obviously a very important location, but he's also getting a lot of feedback from what we would call remote operations, where they're doing directional drilling from 1,000 miles away in a room with several monitors that are laying offset information on top of the current operations. So they have other eyes that are monitoring weight on bit life, angle, ROP. So you have a lot of analytics running in the background that you didn't have 20 years ago, which is increased efficiencies on these wells, increased profitability by putting yourself in the right zone, increased the bit life. You're drilling these wells quicker because you got more eyes looking at this well versus one particular person on location. You've got data backing him up with these remote ops. You have operators that's built remote op rooms. For instance, Chesapeake has had one in operation for 7 years. I talked to Mr. Jeremy Pye here today. He's part of that team. They've been doing this for 7 years. Remote ops, looking at the drilling parameters 24 hours a day in a remote room, locked in, monitoring all the offset data for that given basin, relaying that information to the drilling engineer and the company man at a moment's notice. So this is eliminating a lot of bad choices in the past. Okay, is this bit giving up? No, we're in a harder formation. Stay in the hole. We're going to get out of this formation based upon the analytical information from offset wells. So you're starting to tie into a lot of your previous history, that something we never was able to do before because we didn't have this analytical crowdsourcing ability that we're doing now, and mining data and having your software talk to itself, talk to each other. Before, it was an Excel spreadsheet that wasn't transferring the information over. So you're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of young minds come in that's able to grab this data to where you can utilize this information. So I just spoke with Exxon last week. They have a big project going on where they're taking wells from 20, 30 years ago when these wells were drilled, grabbing all that data, putting it in with production data from today, linking all that information together with the proper identification number, which is probably well number, for instance. Type that well number in, you get all the information from construction to drill to completion to facility build to production data for the last 20 years. You get all that at your fingertips. So once you start linking all that data for that particular well at one touch, then you got a lot of power in your hands, and that's where we're revolving. That's where we're getting to, where you understand the history of each and every well. And once you get there, you have a lot of power. So that's kind of the new mining data and artificial intelligence coming in. That's also it's making the job easier for the company man on the location, taking some of the pressure away, some of the guesswork, because you got analytics backing you up on your decisions. So that's what we're seeing today.
Second story we did at the Bakken. The first one was the Bakken isn't a shale, isn't a shale, or no, the real winners are the shovels and picks sellers. So it's the people in the gold boom, the ones who sold the shovels and picks were the winners. And we saw really quickly how capitalism works in the oil and gas industry. But our second story was, this is not an oil boom, it's a technology boom. And yes, it's powered by oil and gas, but really what we went into was big data, and how the next big real boom is going to be this integration of big data and understanding how to monetize it. That's the other part, that people knew how to monetize it in the drilling part, because you mentioned, the coordinates, and I mentioned, they can hit a pie plate 2 miles below the earth. Well, that's because of data over the years that they've been able to collect. So the example you just gave is now going to bring these companies to a whole new level of drilling and saving, fluids, and all kinds of different things are going to happen because of it. We used to give the example a few years ago to talk about the paradigm shift happening in oil and gas, hitting every single department. HR, human resources. Imagine 30, 20 years ago, trying to do background checks on roughnecks, going from Alaska to the East Coast down to the Corpus Christi, just being Vikings and Mongol hordes from the back in the day. I mean, these guys had records, and there was the reason that they've got drug testing now, and they've got you can have a background check done on somebody before they even do an interview now. I mean, that's how quick the big data works in that department. So, and the reason we bring up those examples is the speed of the data coming into you and the knowledge of what specifically you're looking for. Is there anything out there that you think oil companies, or midstream or downstream or salmon stream, upstream, whatever, is there something that we should be looking for when it comes to that big data? Something that the oil companies that you've seen, like, you know, they could really benefit from this, or maybe it's something you've noticed and this is a good opportunity for to pitch it. I don't know. But there are so many different ways to slice big data, and almost every way you can make money on now because the data's there. Now they just got to figure out how to use it. So take over from there if you want.
Right. And I was just talking. There was a gentleman here that was doing analytics. So if you're going to drill a well in North Dakota, for instance, and you want to drill in this section, you need to find the mineral owners. He's got an app. He's got an application that you can put in, lat long. You can put in coordinates. You can put in whatever coordinates you need for North Dakota, and it's going to bring up all the mineral owners for that section. It's going to bring the mineral owners and the surface owners up, in a click of a button. So I asked him if he could take that to the next step and grab all this old data from wells from 70 years ago. Grab that data like we were just talking about the Exxon's trying to do. Grab this data from 30, 40 years ago when you had paper copies, put those in a digital format to where your analytic software can read that, grab it and chart this information or have this information available for today's use. This well may still be producing. So you can go back and grab all this offset data for wells that's been drilled 70 years ago. And when you re-enter that basin, that's some of the biggest. That's the biggest hurdle is to get offset information for new wells drilled. Dodging those old well bores, going around them. How much oil was pulled out of these reservoirs over the last 50, 70 years, and how was it drilled? How was it completed? If you can tie all that stuff together quickly, one person could do the job of a dozen or more. So it's that advanced software reach. And putting a software and an ability to read it is going to minimize your head count tremendously and increase your results because you have that data to live on. And they've been trying to capture that for a long time, but it's a lot of human effort to get those old paper copies, PDFs and whatnot in a digital format to be able to read. So I'm seeing that coming forward. Now, all the wells being drilled currently, the data is getting very well captured. The new data is captured very well. You got a lot of analytics capturing that and trending that, and that's the future. So you're getting younger people in the industry that are more apt to use electronics, more apt to use software. So your baby boomers, if you will, they're starting to age out. They're a little slower to make adjustments to software advancements. The younger people are coming up, and that's what they know. That's what they live. I mean, you have Google Analytics, and you got Amazon. That's AWS. That's a big part of their business. Is cloud sourcing, cloud data, and you're seeing that move across all industries to be more mobile on the internet. To be digital. Digital is the way to go. You see a lot more people when Corona advanced this, but you see a lot of guys working from home. I go to an office, you got one guy lives in Calgary, you got one guy lives in Denver, and you got one guy in the office, and they're more comfortable with operating like that. So the slaving in the office from 8 to 5 is not the norm anymore. Younger people have broadened their minds to having a flex schedule. So it's making life a little more desirable for those guys with families. So you're starting to see that change, and you're starting to see the embracing technology.
One of the stories we did early on too was Carrie Frank was her name, out of Wisconsin, and she had pretty much revolutionized the airline industry. What I mean by is she was the one that was the lead, taking the airline's black box that weighed like 50 pounds that the airline had to bring with them for safety reasons. The pilots had to bring them, and she got them to find. It took her like 4 or 5 years to get companies to be okay with it, put it on iPads, okay? But through the course of that, these were safety manuals and these types of things that these guys, and every time something would change, they had to take out all the paper and all of those black boxes, put a new piece of paper in. So they had full-time employees dedicated to these black boxes in the industry to update them and things like that, because it had its own traffic, okay? So essentially what ended up happening was, she got it through, and all the stuff happened that you thought would. They became more efficient when pilots became more aware because of things. They were able to look up if they had questions on policies quicker. But the one thing that nobody thought of, that until I think it was a year went by, the airline started saving money on gas, because that 50 pounds made a difference in the gas savings, like significant enough to actually be seen. That's what I'm waiting for the oil and gas industry to win. This big data starts playing out a little bit, and then they start to see how it's starting to save in certain areas. That's what I think is going to be fun, and that's one of the things. If you're out there and you're listening and you've been resisting some change, that's a reason to accept it in. Because, hey man, water always finds its own level, and that's what's happening here. Things are going to level out. It's just, we're shifting some jobs around, we're shifting some different criteria around. There was a time when I was in college, if you were in computer science, for example, when you were done, your major was no longer relevant. The things you learned as a freshman were outdated by the time you were a senior. So, that's how quickly the technology changed. Jobs change too. So right. We're seeing that happen. Are you seeing the shift of jobs in your consulting side?
Yes, you're starting to see the consolidation with the majors consolidating. There was 4 or 5 in the last week. That's the same thing happened in the 90s. You had some consolidation. Well, you also made these companies leaner, right? You took people lost 50% of the industry is going to lose their jobs possibly due to consolidation. So you're getting a lot leaner. So you're able to make money at a cheaper cost per barrel of oil because you have less employees. But also you're talking about using software and technology. That technology is taking some of that human element out of it, where one person is way more efficient than they used to be, right? So one person is way more efficient, so you need less staff. We had Exxon lay off 14,000 people last week. It's going to, that's, 15% of their staff roughly. That is going to be a trend across all basins, all operators.
How many thousand?
14,000.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, 14,000 people were laid off last week.
I saw
on
the
Thursday.
headline, but it didn't retain that. So that is a considerable amount of people. That's like Disney.
Well, they went. They were going to have a capital expenditures of $33 billion this year. They cut that back to 23 billion was their goal. They actually reached 19 billion. This fourth quarter report's coming up. They hit 19 billion. Next year they're going to spend 16 billion. So they're spending half as much money next year than they expected to do in 2020. So, I mean, you're going to have a big reduction in their exploration, of course, but you're also having a huge human layoff, unfortunately. You're laying off a lot of employees to save that much capital. So that's happened across the board. So when we see that, that's consultant firms come in and fill that void. They fill that gap on-demand, right? So you may have an engineer. He may be busy 6 months out of the year. We're going to be the engineer staff for you for those 6 months. When a job happens that's out of the scope of the skeleton crew that you currently have, or the lean staff, something that's just too far beyond their means to cover, that's when we come in and fill that gap. So, like I say,
this market is really prime for you right now.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and I'm not saying that to just stroke your ego or anything, but this much shift in the marketplace, 14,000 people, that's substantial, okay? Like, I thought, Whiting and Chesapeake's were big numbers, and I thought Disney's were big numbers. These are oil and gas jobs. That's more like 28,000, because an oil and gas job a lot of times is basically like 2 salaries. These are good jobs that keep communities going, and so that tells me that there's a big shift happening in the marketplace. And that's where consultants do pretty well. And so I'm not trying to make light of the marketplace, because the thing about the oil and gas industry I love is that most of the people are grown-ups and they understand that there's an ebb and flow of life. And so you have to be able to stick around during the bad times so you can make money during the good times. And interesting. So talk to me about how people can get in touch with you. And Houston Astros. Are you an Astros fan? You got Houston Astros socks on.
Well, we do go to Houston quite a bit. Obviously, oil capital of the world.
I know, but we're in Oklahoma.
Oil capital of the world. So we have a lot of customers there. Houston's a six and a half hour drive from my house.
I got ADD. I'm right mid-sentence. Ooh, a blue car. What happened?
6.5 hour drive for us to get to Houston. So
I just noticed you.
I spent a lot of time in Houston before this pandemic broke out. Now I'm spending a lot of time in Midland. I have an office in Midland, so you can reach me in Midland as well. You can hit me up. We got crescentconsulting.net. We are on Facebook. We are on LinkedIn. I think we just crossed over the 5,000 follower mark the other day in LinkedIn, so we're growing that. It's grown 75% in the last month in followers on LinkedIn. So, we're out here doing events. We do letting people know about our benefits package that we have. So there's a lot of nuances with consulting that some people might not know unless you are deep in the weeds of consulting. We offer a quick pay. So a guy turns in his time. We have a direct deposit 24 to 36 hours in their account, which is a big deal to these guys because there's some folks that they're not unable to cover payroll. So you have some guys that may be out there 2 weeks to 30 days waiting for their pay from their consulting firm, and that's very nerve-wracking because people are going out of business, unfortunately, in this time frame. So we get people over for that. We've also had people that we offer a great healthcare option for guys. So consultants out here that's listening, we have healthcare options for you and your family and your kids, all starting at $300 a month for Blue Cross Blue Shields. It's a PPO. It's a good across all of U.S. It's got great coverage in rural areas. So give me a ring, drop me a line. I can walk you through that. We also have a encompassing master service agreement that protects the consultants. We don't indemnify ourselves from the consultants. We have some competitors that put a indemnification clause in their contract that says, all right, Mr. Consultant or Mrs. Consultant, if you make a decision we feel was unprudent, it wasn't smart, it wasn't ethical, we're not gonna cover you because we didn't like the decision you made. So therefore, that injury that happened and you got sued for $250,000 to $1 million, let's say, we don't feel like we want to cover you because we felt like you made the wrong choice. Now that's a big, bold statement to make, but they put that in their contract to cover themselves and to decrease their exposure to you. So there's guys that's been left hanging out there with $250,000 of litigation costs that they're paying out of pocket. We don't do that. So that's one of the things our owners take pride in is they don't indemnify themselves from the consultant. They protect you no matter what happens out there. They lived it. They've been out there before. They understand what goes on. We have a $22 million umbrella coverage on that individual. Nobody, knock on wood, nobody's ever went over that 22 million umbrella. So we have that going for us. So those are a few of the nuances that guys will want to know and they don't understand. And we also have a competitive percentage. So, and we have today we got 145 guys working a month right now. We had 300 in March. So we're last week we had 10 guys go to work. So if you guys are out looking for work, give me a ring, hit up our website, which is crescentconsulting.net. We have a portal. We got a button you can download your resume. It also has 75 choices of your experience and basins, so I categorize all those. So right now I got 1,700 good resumes on hand for people to review if when they're ready, and that's what we offer. We try to put the best benefits package together to protect those guys' families. The consultants, that is. So we also have 450 MSAs across the U.S. with major operators and service companies. A lot of service companies come to us to help facilitate their pay and their back office. We would take care of paying those guys. We'll take care of their health care. All they do is send us a timesheet, and we take care of all their facilitate their pay. We'll send that service company an invoice every couple weeks. Like we've paid, ABC, XYZ guys, X amount of dollars. Here's your invoice for that. They got one invoice to pay versus 50 employees or 50 consultants. So the people take advantage of that on a daily basis for us to take care of their employment payment or the consulting paying process.
And you're based out of where again?
We have an office in Oklahoma City. We have an office in Midland, Texas.
I got Midland. Sorry, I got to turn my mic up there. I got Midland, and then But you're based out of Oklahoma City.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, great. And what's the website again?
It's crescentconsulting.net, and you can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Crescent Consulting.